Watch your tubbers. I'm about to do a update. If those that you remember right back from my very first vlog, I think I entitled it my journey from catering manager to truck driver. Well, long story short, that has been just under a year ago. In fact, it probably just over a year, because I started vlogging just before I passed my test, and I passed my test in July, back end of July. So as of end of July, I'll have had a full year's driving experience on Class 2. So those that can remember, I don't think I spoke too much about it, but I was in a job. I loved my job for the longest time. I spent the best part of 25 years in catering, and for around 22 of those years I enjoyed it. I built up a really good base of knowledge. I could turn me on to whatever it was. But then I went to work for a company. I was doing agency work, and then this company kept asking me to work for them, The recession was kicking in, so I agreed. And at that time they were a decent company. I quite enjoyed working for them. But a couple of years in, maybe, I spent a total of 6 years with them, something there or thereabouts. Halfway through that process, as a company, they changed. They changed what they did, they rebranded, they changed the management structure, and also, and this is nothing to do with them, they also incorporated new ruling in the industry about GDAing. So food that you're selling over the counter to be GDA'd, and also the allergens had to be displayed. It was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. And I didn't like the management at top, right at the top. It had changed from the guy that owned the company, started the company. Here's the next line down. I'm not going to mention names, but the next line down, he employed 2 people to my mind, and I bet you one of them at least is not there now, by the nature of the business. But yeah, and this one particular guy, he was very ignorant. I remember for the biggest time my job was to troubleshoot canteens, because it was commercial catering. Troubleshoot canteens that were having problems for one reason or another. I had to go in, sort them out, get them back on track. Well, this one particular one was really bad, and this guy, the manager that I'm talking about, walked in. He didn't say hello to the staff, he didn't even say hello to me. Just the fundamentals of that put everybody's back up. All the staff started blah, 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 blah. And they're never going to do anything for anybody like that, ever. And that was basically my sentiment, and I had to get out of it. It was making me ill. I hated it. So, and I'd had in the back of my mind for many years that this is what I would like to do. But you become stuck in that rut. You become afraid to poke your head over the parapet in case it gets blown off. But do you know what? I just put my notice in. I've got a mortgage, I've got a wife, I've got a child, I've got bills, and I put my notice in. And we got through it. That's the long and short of it. We got through it, and I'm so glad I got out of that particular situation into this. So I signed up with an agency. Literally, I got a call because I passed my test one day. I contacted this agency in the morning, and within half an hour the boss was on the phone to me. I said, that was quick. He says, well, if I don't sign you up, somebody else will. I thought, oh, this sounds good. So I went in for an interview, did the paperwork, got on with the books, etc, etc. And 12 months later, I've done all sorts. Absolutely all sorts. From local drops to long distance stuff, general haulage, pallet networks. I've transported timber, I've transported steel, precious cargo, I've delivered to rich residents, I've delivered central London for time or two. Just a big variety of things. And I've enjoyed the past 12 months because of the variety, because I've got that base foundation to build on now, which is why I personally think that getting a bit of experience on class 2 before you go into class 1 is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's wrong to do the other, to go straight from one to the other, but I can certainly see the sense in getting that foundation to build on. You know, if you're coming into this industry with the right frame of mind, i.e. you want to be in it for the long haul, not just as a stopgap or whatever you're doing it for, then it's just dead important to have that sturdy foundation to build on. So that's what we've been doing. But I've had the desire to get to class 1, and I've always had that desire ever since the start. And I think at the very beginning of the year I did a New Year's vlog stating that I'd got several things I want to achieve this year, several goals. One of them was to lose weight. Yeah, well, until that salad to cake ratio changes, that ain't happening. And the other was to get to class 1. Now, one thing I wasn't expecting back in January, because I'd signed up with the agency in July and I'd worked non-stop, and I do mean non-stop, right up to probably a week before Christmas. Then things started bitting and bobbing a bit as people started to prepare for the Christmas shutdown, which didn't over trouble me. But then January, dead. February, dead. And I got to about 6 weeks into this process and nobody warned me about this, and I'm doing that to you now. If you're wanted to get into the industry, it's something you've got to prepare yourself to for. I'm not saying that it's the same on class 1, but on class 2, certainly in the Nottinghamshire area at the very least, there was a slump in January and February, and I struggled to find work. I signed up with 4 different agencies and I had to phone them up daily just to remind them that I was there and looking for work, and I managed to keep things ticking over just by being persistent. So that's my advice to you: don't let them forget that you're there. Yeah, but because of that slump in January, February, I decided that I wanted to suddenly go do my class 1. Yeah, I felt that maybe the slump wasn't there. So late on in February, I knew that the trainer that I did my class 2 with, I'd got it in the back of my mind that his vehicle was a manual box, which I didn't want to have to deal with. I dealt with a manual box in my class 2, and I'm glad I did, for the record. Lots of manual gearboxes still out there in class 2. So if you've done an automatic in class 2, expect the difficulty of having to get used to doing manual in class 2. Yeah, so I thought that my trainer that I originally used, it got a manual gearbox, and I also know that he's very well respected and that he'd be booked up, and indeed he was. I've spoken to him since. So I rung around a few companies and I got talking to this one guy. He sounded alright, and I went out for an assessment drive, me and this other chap, and I didn't think anything of that, the fact that this other chap was sat in the lorry as well. It didn't cross my mind to ask why. And I signed up on a wagon and drag course, which was my first mistake. My second mistake was that when I turned up for the course the following Monday, I think I signed up on the Friday, the following Monday I turned up to do the course, and it was a total random guy that I've never met before, never. And I don't know if this guy was because he got a cough too cold type thing, so I think he was feeling a bit rough. But I don't know if he's generally always like this, but he was very nonchalant. Couldn't really give a stuff. They rented a training ground at a cattle market in Derby, and you could only use that cattle market when there wasn't a cattle market on, and it wasn't enough time. And he said to me, "Oh, it's simple, you just can't reverse." And I thought, and it played on me until I'd pulled the truck over, because we pulled the truck over, because do you know what, that was out of order, that was. I said, it's your job I've paid you to teach me how to drive, and your best you've got to give is to tell me that I can't reverse. Yeah. So, yeah, the whole experience wasn't good, but despite that, test day come, and I decided I'd go for the Sunday. I was offered the Sunday test. I had to pay a premium of extra £25, but I thought, well, the roads will perhaps be quieter in and around Nottingham. No, if anything they were busier, especially around the area I took the test in, because of people shopping, you know, IKEA in particular. And I come up to this one island, I blocked it off, and then when I set off, the guy squeezed his way through, and the lady that took me for my test, quite rightly, failed me for that, because it was considered dangerous, because he got out past me, and then as I went to go to my lane, because it split it into two lanes, there's a dedicated IKEA lane and another lane for going straight on. Well, I went straight across into lane 2. Because he was there, then I cut his nose off, so to speak. I was quite aware of him, but you don't do that. So I failed that particular test. It was, you know, I come close to passing it, in fairness, despite the poor level of training I received, and it was poor, no two ways about that. Yeah, so I went back, licked my wounds, you know, it hurt a fair bit. And then I got a text message from the trainer that had taken me for my class 2. He said, "I've watched your vlogs, I've seen that you're having problems, let me know if I can help, happy to sort your reversing out, etc." Yeah, so I texted him back, and I phoned him at one point, and we had a chat about it. And he said, "Look, I know the guys, you did have a poor deal with your training, why don't you come on board with me?" I said, "Well, to be fair, Ian," I said, "I didn't want to do it in a manual gearbox." He says, "It's not a manual, it's a Opticruise Scania," which basically means, for those that you don't know, that it's just like an automatic truck, where you select the gear on your stalk on the steering column, but it does have a clutch pedal. So when you come to a stop, you have to dip your clutch, and also it's useful for when you're reversing and stuff. Apparently, it promotes better control. But to be fair, I don't have a problem with the automatic anyway. But yeah, and that kind of put my mind at rest. I said, okay, well, let's do it. Let's book it in. So I booked it in for the 16th of June, and I was out on a job on the 2nd of June. I was at Grimsby. and I got a text message. I'd just been doing a drops, and I pulled up for a 15-minute break, and I read this text message. It says, "Hi Paul, there's a guy just let me down. He's yada yada yada. I've got an opening if it's any use to you." And the opening was the next day. So I'm sat reading this message going, oh my god. Texting back, I went, yeah, let me just contact my agency, let me just let everybody know that plans are going to have to change for next week, and I'll get back to you. Phone my agency. They were not best chuffed because we were busy by this stage. It soon picked up. Just for the record, it started picking up mid-March, and then back to April it was mad again, and it's been mad ever since. And I've had all the agencies calling me for work. It's been mad. So yeah, I agreed to do it. The very next day started training, and it was the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. No, the Thursday, Friday, then the Monday, Tuesday test on the Wednesday. And we went up to the airfield. I got to grips with the reversing, the uncoupling, etc. We did all that up there. I spent a lot of time out on the road, and because Ian does a 2-to-1 ratio, which I can 100% wholeheartedly, if you don't listen to another word I ever say, don't let that ever put you off with training. Because let me tell you the good thing about when an instructor does a 2-to-1, so i.e. one instructor does 2 students at the same time. What it does is you'll go and do your bit for an hour out on the road, and then he'll say pull over, you get to go and sit in the centre seat, and then you get to watch the other guy do. He makes his mistakes, he has his faults, or he does good things, and you learn from that as well. So you get full day's training, but you get that break each time to let it soak in, watch everything else that's going on around, listen to everybody that's going on. Yeah? Spot on. Absolutely, don't let that ever put you off. If you think you only need 1-to-1, no, I'm telling you, it's the best way to do it. Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I've done it twice now. Whereas the wagon drag was 1-on-1, it was 3 hours. Because their reversing ground was best part of an hour away, you wasted an hour getting there, an hour getting back. Before you knew it, that was it. Bang, you're in for your test. Not prepared. And I'm going to be absolutely truthful with you, I'm glad I didn't pass, because I was not ready to and up to test standard back in February. Absolutely. So yeah, the Wednesday comes round, I go for my test, and because I'm getting on a bit now, nerves are a big problem for me. But I did the reverse exercise, I took 1 shunt, that was, again, it was more nerves, but no problem with that. Did the uncoupling, etc. Went out, did an absolute beautiful drive. I was very chuffed, very pleased with my drive. Pulled up into the test station, expecting him to give me my certificate. In all honesty, he said, I'm afraid on this occasion you've not passed. I went, oh, what was it? Thinking I'd missed something, and it was speed. I went, oh, speed? I thought, have I missed something here? And I wrapped my brains. I said, did I creep over 20 miles an hour in the such and such area? He went, no. He said, lack of speed. That's right, you've heard that right. Basically, in layman's terms, I failed for dawdling. Yeah? In areas around Nottingham, they have the 40 signs. They're about 10 inch so, and they're I think it's every 200 yards, they must be. Well, half of them you cannot see, and that's not me making excuses. You genuinely can't see them because the shrubs have grown over them, or the green or whatever. And yeah, I didn't get up to speed, up to 40 miles an hour. And because I got 4 minors all in the same box, that's that comes back as 1 serious. So there we go. So that's why I failed, because I got 4 minors, but all in the same thing and the same action, and that made 1 serious fault, and a serious fault's a fail. And I woke up the next morning. I was angry. I was spitting bullets. I thought I'd been treated unfairly. I thought, well, I've only been in the rig for 4 days. Nottingham's a difficult place to drive around anyway. I was just erring on the side of caution, yada yada yada. And yeah, I was angry. And you know, I told my instructor, I said, you know, he felt it was a bit harsh, but you know, it really upset me in actual honesty. And not as much the fact that I'd failed, but the fact that it had cost me all that money, because I'd paid for the wagon drag course. That was $1,250. I then retrained on Arctic, because I started from scratch, because I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. Another 1,250 quid. So I've just paid another £300 for a retest. You're starting to do the maths. Put that alongside my class 2. This licence has cost me a lot of money. But yeah, so he said, listen, don't let it beat you. He said, it's simple, we can rectify that, that's not a problem. Let me book you in for a retest. And I let him do it. I said, yeah, just do it, just do it. And he did, and I didn't think about it again. I didn't tell you guys that I was doing this test because I didn't want the added pressure. Don't get me wrong, your support has been second to none. I love the way that when somebody's going in for something, everybody clubs together, wishes them well, etc. But I just didn't want that extra pressure. I just wanted it to be me versus this, and that's what I did. So yeah, he booked me in for this. I didn't think much about it, and we went out for the drive. Oh, hello. Yes, I went out for this drive, and before 2 hours lesson, and I felt cool as a cucumber. Took it in my stride. Didn't really make many mistakes. Made one little mistake, but that was easy to rectify, no problem. And then all of this, because we pulled up to have a tea and coffee. He said, we're not going to have time, we need to get back to the test centre. And all of a sudden the nerves kicked in. Oh my God, the heart's boom, 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 and off you go. Straight in. The guy that poked his head out the window to wave us onto the bay, ready to start the reversing exercise, was the same guy that failed me. And I looked across at Ian, I said, Ian, I hope I've got him. He says, why is that? I said, because he set the standard that I've got to beat. I said, if I can get a pass with that particular gentleman, I'll have known that I'll have earned my pass. I didn't just get a bit lucky. And sometimes you do need a bit of luck out in your test, as all drivers will tell you. Sometimes it's just pure bad luck that you fail. Something happens out there and it's made you do something that, you know, you perhaps wouldn't have done normally. So I steps up to the hockey, and this guy comes out. I've got him, the same guy. I won't mention his name, but he comes out and says, hello, how are you doing? Yeah, fine. Well, we've got a better day for it today. And off I went. Reversed in. I didn't take a shunt, straight in. No problem. We sorted that. Pulled forward, did the uncoupling. Now, I quite like procedures. I like it when there are steps in what you're doing. So there's a format to follow. And I like doing that. So I never had a problem with the coupling and uncoupling, because I'm good at following a procedure. So yeah, I didn't have any problem with that. I thought, well, if we can just get out of this area where you do the reverse and the coupling, I can get out on the road, and I know that within like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you start to relax a little bit. The old nerves start to come down and you just start to drive, and that's important. Just to start, just to drive the lorry. All you're thinking about is what you've been taught, this, that, yada yada yada. But the absolute best bit of advice is just to drive. You wouldn't go down, well, I'd hope you wouldn't go down the road like on your mobile phone and shouting out at people. You'd give it your concentration. You wouldn't run into the park buzz. Well, just because you're driving, you're just driving. Well, that's the most important thing, is let those nerves settle down a bit and just drive the bloody thing. And out we went, and had a cracking drive. I made sure I kept my speed up. When it was safe and appropriate to do 40, I did 40. When I was coming back down from 40 into a 30, did the mirror checks, reduced the speed, so that when I crossed that threshold, I was doing that speed limit. So it was easy to rectify. Got back to the test station, pulled in, I said, I'm pleased to tell you that you've passed. And I went, and the elation I felt was unreal. I felt like I'd just taken the world, picked it up and dropped it off my shoulders, because I dreamed about telling you all. I dreamed about putting this into a vlog, because I think it helps other people. This process that we do on YouTube, there's several of us doing this, I think it helps new drivers to build confidence. They see what's happening, they can put that, people tell them on paper, that's fine, but they can see it for themselves, what the stages, what's happening. They learn by our mistakes, etc. So yeah, I could have kissed this guy, and I said to him, I said, I'm going to be honest with you now. I said, I was ever so angry at you when you failed me. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, I felt that you'd been a bit harsh, because a lot of the signs in and around Nottingham, I said, they're very difficult to read, you know, for one reason or another. And he had to agree with me that. He says, yeah, he said that they could do better, you know. I said, yeah, and I was angry with you. I said, but then, you know, next coming week or so, I calmed down a bit, and I thought, well, no, you've set the standard for me to beat, and I'll be better for it. I said, and I shook his hand, and I thanked him. I said to Ian, I said, I was glad I got you back, because that was the standard that I wanted to beat, and I know I'd earned my certificate. He said, well, thanks for your honesty, I appreciate that. So, which was nice. So yeah, we walked away, we had photos in front of the truck, which I shall put in here somewhere. And yeah, went home. I didn't tell anybody until I saw my wife. My wife was the first person I told. Then I went over and told the in-laws, and then I told the rest of you. Well, sorry, I did drop Mr. Stephen Patterson a message to let him know. I think I sent him along the lines of, hi, if you could be kind enough to give me a call back at some sort, this is Arctic Fox. And I knew he would have got the significance of saying Arctic Fox, because he always said that, I think it was him and Doc said that, yeah, you know, if you pass your class 1 you should be called Arctic Fox, which is open for debate, but yeah. So yeah, I told you guys, that was it, and I felt so proud being able to do that, you know. But none of it I could have done without the support, and this is a bit like an Oscars acceptance speech. Do you know what I mean? But I couldn't have done it without the support of my in-laws. They've been absolutely fantastic. They've taken care of my son when I've needed to, etc., which is a real big thing when you're a parent. And secondly, my wife, she lost her grandmother last month. Well, we buried her last month, and she left her a small amount of money. It wasn't big. And the first thing my wife said was, we'll put that towards your class 1 training. And that, she didn't have to do that. We've both been struggling financially over the past 4 years, because my wife's been retraining to be a counsellor, and I've been paying out to do this, and it's the best part of £6,000 to put it into absolute perspective for you. And my wife's had her training, so she's been doing less hours, and it's cost a fortune. A lot of cost involved in that. So we haven't had the money to just go out and blow and treat ourselves. You know, we have had our holidays because I believe they're important, or etc, etc. But we've really had to tighten our belts, and it's been tough. You know, we haven't just had money to throw at things. So without a second's thought, she said to me, "You can have that. Go do your class 1." I know, and I tried to convince her that she should spend it on whatever she wanted, and she said, "This is what I want." So, Carla, this is from the bottom of my heart, mate. I thank you with every fibre of my being for doing that for me. I love you, and I love you forever. And it was the most selfless thing I've ever seen you do, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I've got to achieve my goal along with your support. Love you, babe. So yeah, I just had to tell my wife that, because I wouldn't have got to this stage now. So yeah, 12 months on, we've gone full circle. I've achieved the goal that I set out to, and I'm chuffed about that. And anybody got the same goals or similar goals, then stick with it. If you fail, just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, go do it again. If you're doing something wrong, put it right, you know. And eventually, sometimes it'll take you'll pass first time, sometimes you'll probably take you 5. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you'll have that certificate and you'll have passed. And that's when you really start to learn, when you're out on the road, I believe. I took it personally when I failed my class 1 first time round, because as I stated in one of my vlogs, that every single test I'd ever been in for, I'd aced. It don't matter what test it was, whether it was firefighting, whatever, I'd always managed to ace it. So yeah, I was really disappointed that I didn't ace my class 1. So you imagine my disappointment when I didn't pass it for the second time. It's taken me three attempts to pass. But I think I'm better for it. And I know people always say that, and you think, yeah, whatever. But I think that examiner that failed me last time made me step my game up. You know, and I think that's where it should be. Absolutely. If you've gone out and passed first time, brilliant. You are the master. You've kept it cool. You've done the work. But there is no shame in failing. Just like I say, there's lots of things that can affect that. So we've come. Also, I've got my first class 1 job on Monday for a company I've driven before. I turned up for what should have been my first 2 shifts, Thursday, Friday, with my pass certificate, which you can drive on legally, just to let you know. And they turned me away, said they wanted 2 years experience. And I asked the question of the agency, do they accept new drivers, and they said yes. So that was it. They turned me away. But then I got this job on class 2. I've come down to Westminster to deliver a load of sound equipment, lighting equipment, and I'm now sat on the beach at Southend-on-Sea, just enjoying my day off, ready to go back in and collect it again. So this is my journey 12 months on. We'll have another one in another 12 months time, hopefully. See how we get on class 1 in the 12 months. As ever, whatever happens goes on the vlog. It's 100% truth. I don't edit stuff, I don't keep stuff out. If I stuff up, it's there for everybody to learn from. So hopefully you won't make the same mistakes that I did. So all my subscribers, thank you. You are the best subscribers in the world. I don't care. People go on about or these gamers, they've got millions of subscribers. They're just anonymous numbers. They're just figures. You know, they don't have any, very little interaction with the subscribers, etc. And sometimes that's all it becomes about, is getting more and more subscribers. Whereas I can give a monkeys if I got 2, in actual fact. But the subscribers that I do have are very active on the channel, and there's some really, really good subscribers. Real good positive stuff. If somebody stumbles, the other subscribers will try and pick them up. Say, look, you know, crack on. You know, all sorts of advice being bandied out there. We have very, very little problems with trolls messing us about, and anybody, we've had a couple of little instances where I've just removed them and reported them to YouTube and had them away, turfed them out. I'm like the bouncer, you know what I mean? It's my channel, get out. But yeah, we've none of that nastiness that goes on a lot of channels, and it's a good support network. So I think we're just a good team. So thanks a lot. Thank you for tagging along for my last 12 months, and this is where we're at. Last one. Catch you later.